So in behalf of California Association of Healthcare Leaders and San Diego Organizations of Healthcare Leaders, we would like to welcome you again for the second week of our Board of Governors exam preparation series. So thank you for being with us today and spending your almost 2 hours time with us. So what are you going to be expecting for today? So we will be doing the body of knowledge on healthcare finance and the human resources. So we have also invited guests to help us with the brain walk and with the question and answers for those for those knowledge areas. And we have also invited the two presidents of the organizations that to give us some welcome and some knowledge or advice why it's important to have a fellow distinction or fellow certification. So without further ado, we would like to reintroduce ourselves, the committee who made this event successful for the whole month. So I'd like to start myself. I'm Michael DeCoco. I'm the chair for the CAHL Member Advancement Committee, and my daytime job is Director for Ancillary Services with Seton Medical Center. Tui?
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. My name is Tui Do. I've been with the the Member Advancement Committee since 2021. I've been a member of ACHE since 2019, starting in the San Diego chapter. So it's good to be up north here. I am the co-chair of this committee. And during the day, I am the California program manager of a nonprofit organization called 8Apr2023. And I will pass it over to my colleague, Rick.
Morning, everyone. I'm Rick Nared. I'm professor of health services administration at California State University and been on this committee, I think, forever. And I got to tell you, I just did a 3-day training program this week as a student that finished with a long multiple choice test. And I used the same technique we talk about and I passed. So I feel better about that.
Sachin?
Sorry about that. You would think that, for years and years we've been doing that, but I still forget. Hi there. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sachin Gangupantula. I am the member of the Advancement Committee here with CAHL. I've been with CAHL for close to 6 years now. And my day job is as a director of operations for Valley Diabetes and Obesity Medical Practice here in Modesto, California. Off to Nora.
Hi, good morning. I'm Nora Powers. I'm sorry I missed the first session last week. I've been on this committee almost as long as Rick. And it's been gratifying to see how we've grown and adapted to technology, reaching more people. So I am with Aetna, a CVS health company. I call myself the token payer rep in this chapter. So any of the others of you that are payer reps also let me know. And I look forward to working with you on this session.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Let's meet our partners from San Diego Organizations of Healthcare Leaders. Do we have Florencia here and Mary? Well,
I can.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Florencia will return next week.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, I know Florencia is out of the country right now, and then Mary, I think I saw a note from her that she's going to be able to join it.
Okay.
I think a little later today. So.
Okay.
But
thank you. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we invited the two presidents for each chapters, and I would like to bring in or turn the floor to Kelly Brian Flannery. He is our CAHL president, and I think he's here in the online in the web. So Kelly, I'm turning it to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Michael. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to this session for board exam preparation. I commend everybody for giving some of your time today on a wonderful Saturday weekend. But that shows your commitment, which is great. Just a little bit about myself real quickly. As Michael introduced me, I am the 2023 CAHL chapter president, and I've been active with volunteering with CAHL for probably about 5 or 6 years. And I am also the chief planning officer for the VA Sierra Pacific Network. So my employer is the VA, the federal government. I've been with VA for about 23 years. So I'm probably going to retire from it. But so that's enough about me. Happy to engage with anybody after this. But yeah, so I'm really glad to see all of you logged in today and that you're taking this important step. I am not a CEO of a large healthcare organization, and that is part of my philosophy on the importance of board certification in healthcare management and achieving fellow status with the American College of Healthcare Executives. Not all of us, will be a CEO of a company or a healthcare organization, and most of us probably don't aspire to that necessarily. But I think that the commitment to being board certified in healthcare management is very important because it shows that we take our job seriously and that we are committed to the lifelong learning and the importance of achieving a standard, of knowledge and commitment and ethics that goes along with being a healthcare management leader and professional. So excuse me, it's the coffee creamer. I apologize for that, everybody. I took a sip of coffee before coming off mute. So with that, I think that I'm happy to see all of you here and doing what you can to prepare for the exam. I did my own preparation as well. I didn't take advantage of CAHL's courses here for board preparation, but I'm certainly glad you are. And so I commend all of you. Glad to see you all. And, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if not, then I think my colleague down in Southern California, Pranav, will introduce himself.
Thanks, Kelly. Great to see you, by the way.
Thanks. And you're my friend too. So I should say my friend down in Southern California in San Diego.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah. So as Kelly mentioned, my name is Pranav Dixit. I'm the 2023 chapter president for SOL, the San Diego Organization of Healthcare Leaders. And first of all, I just want to congratulate all of you on investing in your own careers and investing your commitment to getting the fellow status. I feel like especially nationwide, it's definitely a very well-regarded status. I find that sometimes on the West Coast, folks, some folks don't value it as much. I would challenge that. And so I think it's great that you're all on this call because I am, in order to, I don't want to repeat everything Kelly just said. So the only other thing I want to add is, I have started noticing that there are now hiring decisions where folks that have the fellow status, we'll have two great candidates, but someone that has a fellow status will get the nod over the person without it. So, kind of having this as a feather in your hat, it's a great commitment to your careers. There are absolutely huge advantages to getting the fellow status. So I commend you all and looking forward to watching all of you cross the stage at Congress next year, hopefully, at the graduation ceremony. And just last thing I just want to mention is thank you to our colleagues. I know Florencia and Mary aren't on the call right now, But thank you to our colleagues from CAHL that work closely with our team to put together this great event. I myself was involved with the kind of pre-pandemic, before we did this virtually. I was involved with we called ASG, the Advancement to Fellow Study Group. But I was involved with that, and because seeing the bright leaders that come through these programs, it's great to see that we're now. I'm looking at this call. There's 42 people on here. It's an absolute. It's very telling on the quality of product that our two chapters are putting out here together. So thank you for your hard work, and looking forward to a great session.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kelly and Pranav, for your precious time today, for sharing us your time and meeting our attendees for the Board of Governors review exam participants. So thank you, and we appreciate your time. So we'll move on with the next slide. I think we are giving the floor to Nora to give us some BOG exam test taking tips and some reminders or additional facts. Nora?
Good morning. So we're going to beat these exam taking tips throughout this entire session. But we can't emphasize these enough. They may have said in the first session, we're not pretending to teach you everything you need to know. We're here to help guide you to the information that can be very helpful, that you should be aware of, as well as additional resources, and the advantage of having a group of you be together and work together as you study for this exam. At the end of the session, what we normally do is send out the email list of all the participants, and if you choose not to be contacted, just let us know that you don't want your name on there. But that's been very helpful for others to be able to network and study together. Anyway, so you'll see this throughout the session as we look at sample questions, as Rick does his famous brain walk. These are the tips that we have felt have been have been proven to be very, very effective. So relax, breathe, think clearly, don't let yourself get all jumbled. Remember, you have a few hours to take this exam. You can mark exams to go back, questions to go back if you need to. Rick is the one that taught us how to read each of the options as true or false, because you can start eliminating options right away. Read and reread each question. My favorite piece of advice is then read it backwards. Sometimes your eyes will skip over something that's absolutely vital. Beware of questions that have all of the above, all except. Also, the ones that say never or not, some of those absolutes, those should trigger something in you to take a look at it closer. Again, don't stress on time frames. You have plenty of time. And take breaks. This wasn't an option back when I was taking the paper exam, but now this is great on the computer. And then mark questions for review. You can come back to those. The heart-focused breathing technique is what Sherry has taught us in terms of, focusing your attention on the area of the heart, breathing deeply. Whatever it is that helps you focus and relax is key for this. Okay, next slide. So there were some parking lot questions from before. And one of them was, is the 7th edition of the Well-Managed Healthcare Organization sufficient to study? Because I know the newest edition is the 9th. Yes, the Well-Managed Healthcare Organization, anywhere from the 5th to the 9th edition are very good for understanding like the basic operations of a hospital. It's not intended to be the end-all be-all resource to study, but honestly, it's not the edition that matters. As long as you get a firm understanding of what the book contains. And then with respect to the credits that you're getting for this course, any of the qualified education credits that you get other than the face-to-face, any of those, you have to self-report it yourself. And there's a place under my ACHE where you can report your credits.
Can I give an additional, input on the first question, Nora? So the well-managed healthcare organization as well is just, it will give you the basic knowledge of the hospital operations. It talks about, the different ancillary services, the nursing area, the board of governors, quality. However, if you want to deep down or do it further, you have to use another resources that will talk more about board of governors or about healthcare finance.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Next slide. Okay, and again, we're going to pound this into you as well. We're going to send out a Survey Monkey at the end of the series, and we do honestly take everyone's feedback and recommendations into this. Honestly, this award-winning series is only good because we've had other people give us feedback and recommendations. And I believe we've improved each and every single time. So I know filling out surveys are kind of tough, but we're passionate about this. Part of your paying it forward is to give feedback so that we can continue to improve and reach out to as many people as necessary to help pass the exam. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we wanted to call out some events that are coming up. These are your qualified education credits. I'm not sure, does the Cal Leadership Network event have continuing education? I'm not sure. But it is a great resource for getting to meet people, truly, truly. And then we do have Learning from Leaders, an option coming up at the end of this month, and they're still accepting registration. And I highly recommend it. There was not a time when we had these virtual opportunities or even the face-to-face locally. That's what the chapters have been so good for.
And Nora,
yes.
Just want to confirm that, yes, Learning from Leaders is a qualified education event.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about the networking event. But again, those are very, very valuable where you can ask questions, you can get advice, information from other members of the chapter.
Nora, I think most of the networking events don't come with credit.
Yes.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. And then here's a SOL event coming up in just a couple weeks, the Member Appreciation and Networking event also. And this is on site, correct? It's not a virtual.
That's correct. We are meeting in person.
I'm willing to come down for that.
And we would love to have you. It's a great location, right on the bay with a great view. So come on, come all.
Yeah, I'd like that. Thanks. Okay, next slide. Okay, on that note, I'm going to pass this over to Twee.
And thank you so much, Nora. So everyone, it is my pleasure to introduce James Revels. He and I have known each other all the way since 2019. We were on the Graduate Student Council in the SOL chapter for a little while, and he was promoted to treasurer for at least a year in SOL, and now he's in Washington State. So he's currently the director of the financial planning and analysis for Kaiser Permanente, and also a lecturer at UC San Diego. He has a master's in advanced studies and leadership of healthcare organizations at UC San Diego. And now he's the co-chair in the Washington State chapter of ACHE, also in the advancement committee. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience. And so I cannot be any more excited to have him walk with us and talk with us all finances. So take it away, James.
Oh, thank you, Twee, for the great introduction. I'm happy to be with all you here. And as Twee, I mean, I've always been in healthcare. It's been my whole career. It's all I've ever known. So I'm, happy to go on this journey with you and provide you the support that you need in preparing you for this exam. So I'm really excited to be here, and then thank you for your participation as well. So this slide, a lot of these topics that are shown in the slide and the one to follow are gonna, we'll touch on many of these line items you see here, and we'll really focus. So I'll try to give you a little bit of background as we go through these items, but starting with the financial accounting principles, these are the things that companies follow when they're reporting their financial data. So we'll touch on the assets and liabilities, revenue, expenses. They're all part of the financial statements, the balance sheets and income statements, and cash flow statements, that type of thing. Operating budgets, we'll talk about, zero-based budgeting versus flex budgeting. So all the different budgeting methodologies and principles. We'll discuss how important cash flow is, and when we look at capital budgeting. So I think that'll be a real key topic. And reimbursement methodology, we talk about value-based purchasing versus fee-for-service arrangements. Productivity measures will be an important one because that will measure how efficient we are when we're providing services to our customers and our patients. Next slide. Okay, I'm not going to go through and explain these, but one thing I would take away from, won't go through each of these line items, but one thing I would take away from the slide is that, a lot of these topics, understanding a little bit of the background between each one of these will be important because these will be brought out into the questions that we'll go through today, and then some of the supplemental questions that we'll provide everyone. So it's just important to have at least a basic understanding of some of these key topics and theories. So I would say, all the strategic planning that goes along with business models, a lot of financing that occurs in healthcare, a lot of the asset management, a lot of these things, you'll see that they're going to be brought out into the questions. So just having a basic understanding of this it's really going to help understanding what they're asking for in the questions and ultimately answering those questions. So with that, I think why don't we get into the questions? Okay, so this first one is asking us, during the investigation of a merger or acquisition, why would it be prudent for a healthcare executive to obtain advice from someone other than internal legal counsel? So our choices are A, regular legal counsel may not be objective. B, external legal counsel may have experience in joint ventures. C, external legal counsel has the ability to provide the services in a more economic and timely manner. Or D, specialized expertise is needed in this area. So wanted to give everyone a chance to, in the chat, provide their answers, what they think the answer to this question is. And then I'll go through each one of these and do a little brain teaser, in terms of analyzing this question that's being asked. Great. It looks like a lot of y'all got it right off. Yeah, right off, and be able to answer the question. So it sounds like it's pretty obvious. So I'll just, for the benefit of everyone, I'll just walk through this real briefly, but it sounds like it was a pretty easy one to answer. So the first one, A, regular legal counsel may not be objective. Well, this is, this may be true, but it's not a primary reason to use someone other than internal legal counsel. B, has external legal counsel may have experience in joint ventures. Well, go back and read the question. They're asking about a merger or acquisition, which is different from a joint venture. when we talk about merger or acquisition, which this question is asking, that's a consolidation of companies, and a joint venture is really when your two businesses are entering into a contractual arrangement to accomplish a common goal, such as growth or profits. And then C is, it says external legal counsel has the ability to provide the services in a more economic and timely manner. Certainly not more economic. If anything, it's going to be more expensive. So I think D was the obvious answer. It's pretty much everyone's sounded that got. It's really about getting the business receiving the advice they need and exactly when they need it. So, but great answers. Sounds like this was a good one. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so a ratio of output to input is a measure of A, liquidity, B, process, C, productivity, or D, the work of environment. So before we attempt to answer this, keep in mind when it talks about output to input, it's really measuring how efficient a person completes a task, which should give you a pretty good clue on what the answer to this question is. So, I would go through an example. When they talk about output, they're referring to the number of surgeries a surgeon does or a provider does. And the input is really the number of hours it takes to perform the surgery, or the number or the hourly rate in which the physician gets paid. So again, it sounds like everybody got this one. Was pretty obvious. All the liquidity is basically measuring the company's ability to pay something in the short term, and process is about measuring the outcome of steps to go through a process. And so you could see the A, B, and D just doesn't fit with what's being asked. And the productivity was, again, it's pretty obvious answer to what was being asked. So it's really about reading the questions being asked and making sure we understand what is being asked. So, so again, focusing on that, I think that'll help answer the question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, C. Okay, so this one is asking, a hospital that continuously assesses the interests of the community and searches for ways to meet these interests can be described as A, predatory, B, market-oriented, C, market optimized, and D, differentiated. So one thing I would, again, what does everybody think the answer to this question is? And we can kind of go through each of the choices. Okay. Wow, everybody's really with it this morning. So that's great. Again, when we're looking at choices and what's being asked of us, predatory, even if you don't know what that means, it sounds pretty bad to me. And it's really about a pricing strategy, which a company does in order to offer a very low price point with the intention of driving out the competition. So that one's pretty obvious. You can eliminate that. The market-oriented, that is really about identifying the needs and desires of your customers and creating products and services that would satisfy them. So that one is, pretty obvious. It would be a good choice in answering this question. Where, as opposed to market optimized, C, that's about really about doing a better job of reaching your business goals. Making market adjustments in order to satisfy the desired business outcome. So that one can be eliminated, and then differentiated across. Of course, that's about setting a price point, again, to distinguish yourself from your competitors. So I think here, and it sounds like a lot of people have got it, B seems to be an obvious answer to this question.
So James, this is Michael. Just wanna give us some input on this question, around this question. So this is also related to, community need assessment. So if you can also go and research or read about community need assessment, this question is related to that. So just an FYI.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you. I think that's a great and you're right. Exactly right. You're looking at what the needs of the community is, and setting the business up where you're able to meet those needs of the community in healthcare, which is very community focused. So I think, understand the certificate of need is really a key part of answering this question. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Net income as a percent of gross revenues and return on equity are two most important indicators of A, profitability, B, creditworthiness, C, market strength, or D, cash position. Again, look at what they're asking. They're talking about net income and return on equity. Well, that should be a good clue on what the answer to this question is. And return on equity, for those may not know, that's just your net income divided by your net assets, or your equity. So again, that's it both mentions net income, and if you look at that compared to the choices that are given here, that should give you a pretty good clue on what the answer should be, which sounds like everybody have gotten it based on the responses in the chat. So creditworthiness, cash position is really about ability to pay down your short-term obligations. Creditworthiness is your ability to meet upcoming obligations, and then market strength is, doesn't really relate back to what's being asked here. So I'd say, and based on responses everybody's given, I say A makes the most sense. So the answer is A. Yep. Okay. The next one is when reviewing assets, which element is the most important indication of an organization's liquidity? So let's talk, before we attempt to answer this question, let's talk about what's being asked here. So when they're talking about liquidity, it's the ability to convert assets into cash. So that's really what the questions are being asked. So is it A, buildings and equipment, B, long-term investments, C, cash and short-term investments, or D, land and other assets? That seems like to be a pretty obvious one. Because if you think about it, this question being asked is, long-term investments, which is your investments over a year, buildings and equipment, and land and other assets, it takes a longer time period to convert those into cash. So, I mean, you could probably eliminate A and D right off the bat, and then long-term investments, you're going to hold that longer than a year. So C seems to be the pretty obvious choice here. And the answer is C, yes. Again, sounds like everybody got that pretty quickly based on what is being asked. Okay, financial statements are important in order to A, identify, measure, record, and communicate in dollar terms the economic events of and status of an organization, A, or B, serve as a control mechanism for budgeting, C, provide detailed financial information for control at the department level, or D, provide staffing guidelines to human resource managers. Yep, so based on what's in the chat, that one's, again, a pretty obvious one. I think A is a pretty good definition of what a financial statement is. I would just add that B is, it's probably a secondary use of the financial statements, but not a primary one. And then C and D are independent of the financial statements. C is something that exists in the subsidiary ledger, and then D is completely independent of what you would see in a financial statement. So you pretty quickly eliminate C and D as a choice because it's not part of your financial statements. And then, so it's really between A and B, and A seems like the better answer here when we're talking about financial statements, since it's a primary use. Okay. And it's A, great. Okay, so number 7, in most cases, the most favorable financial audit opinion that an organization can receive is A, qualified opinion, B, adverse opinion, C, disclaimer of opinion, or D, unqualified opinion. So, okay, so let's talk about. I think that the key here is just to understand, have at least a basic understanding what the different opinions mean. Well, looking at these choices, we could probably eliminate 2 of the choices right off the bat. Adverse opinion sounds pretty bad to me, and that usually occurs when the auditors discover a high level of material in the statements, in your financial statements. Not good at all. C, they're not offering an opinion at all, so you can probably eliminate B and C right off the bat. Then it's really becomes between unqualified opinion and qualified opinion. And the qualified opinion is when the auditor is not confident about any specific process or transaction that prevents them from issuing a clean report. So, so they're qualifying, they're putting something into their audit report that indicates a particular issue that was uncovered that they need to qualify their opinion. Now, unqualified opinion is what's known as a clean report, and that is a type of opinion that auditors most often give and what businesses expect to receive in their financial statements. So I think here is the obvious or the better choices. D would be an unqualified opinion. And it is D. Okay. Okay, number 8, the purpose of the statement of operations or income statement is to, and what this question is, just so you know, what the answers are giving you, it's testing your ability to understand the purpose behind each type of financial statement and what they're used for. So, so is it A, present the financial position of the organization at a specific point in time? B, present the reasons net assets change from one period to another. C, cash receipts and where they came from, and cash disbursements where they went during the accounting period. Or D, present the operating results of the organization over a period of time. Well, the questions ask statement of operations, and look at D, it's got the word operating in it. So that could give you a pretty good clue on what the answer to this question is. So it's those types of hints and tricks that will help you, eliminate some of the choices. But let's see what, and it sounds like a lot of us kind of got that point, so that's great. But let's just review the choices. So when it talks about presenting financial, A is saying financial position of an organization at a point in time. That's the definition of a balance sheet. So at any point in time, the balance sheet is reporting the financial, your assets and liabilities, as well as your net assets. Now, B refers to your statement of changes of stockholders' equity. So it's talking about net assets, which is in the change from one period to another. C is referring to the cash flow statement because it's talking about how cash changes between the receipts and disbursements. So those, if you didn't, you could eliminate some of these choices just by the understanding what each type of financial statement is and what their purpose is behind them. So really the income statement, which is D, represents over the course of your fiscal year your operating results. So that one, again, it's just understanding that and then linking what is being asked in the question to the choices that are given.
And don't be confused between the phrase specific point in time and over a period of time, because sometimes you can interchange those. So just an FYI.
Yeah. So whenever they mention specific point in time, that's always the balance sheet. Always. When they mention period of time, that's going to be the income statement. So that's how you can distinguish a period of time and a specific point in time. Okay, and that's D. Okay, so the ratios, this one's asking, the ratios that measure an organization's long-term liquidity are called A, liquidity ratios, B, profitability ratios, C, capital structure ratios, or D, efficiency ratios. Now, what this question is testing you is you don't necessarily, in this question, you don't necessarily have to memorize the formulas, but at least understand the purpose behind these ratios. So that's what's being tested here in terms of your knowledge. So when it talks about long-term liquidity, you know, it's really the organization's ability to satisfy those upcoming obligations. So based on the choices that are given, what do we think the answer to this question may be? Okay, it sounds like we have some answers in the chat of C. So let's look at the choices. So A, liquidity ratios, that's really about businesses' ability to pay its short-term obligations, how liquid you are. That's what the liquidity ratios are referring to. So it basically it tells you whether you have the ability to pay your upcoming liabilities. B, when they talk about profitability ratios, that refers to how efficiently a company generates profit and value for its shareholders. So, so that really, you know, doesn't relate to liquidity. That's really related to profitability. Now, capital structure ratios, on the other hand, C, that's really about you know, that financial ratio measures the firm, your company's ability to measure the long-term stability and structure, or the ability of that company to satisfy its long-term debt obligations. So that's where that's what really addresses the question of long-term liquidity. So, and then the last one, efficiency ratios, is measuring a company's ability to generate revenues and its ability to manage those assets. So really doesn't address liquidity again. So capital structure ratio is one that does address the long-term liquidity question, because it's you know, when we look at this, it's looking at your total liabilities to the total amount of equity you have in your business and its ability to satisfy that. Okay. Let's see.
Hey, James, this is Michael.
Yeah.
Just if I would like to recommend on how to prepare, because when I was preparing the fellow exam for finance healthcare for ratios, it's hard for me. So what made it easy for me was I created you know, agreed the ratios, the formula, and the purpose of those ratios. So probably, and it helped me a lot. So
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what when I you know, when we started this question, that's why I mentioned it. At the very least, just understand the purpose behind it, behind these ratios and what they are. And certainly understanding the formula would help. But I think in this question, it's probably enough just to understand what they're measuring.
Functions, yeah.
Purpose behind them. So rather than you know just memorizing the formula itself, but I think in this case it was enough to at least answer the question that's being asked. So again, it's understanding what they're asking, and then you can then go on there and start eliminating some of the choices.
Yeah, because there are also in the questions, there are also some questions on computations for ratios. The basic though, you do the formula that you can just write on the spot. You can just calculate that in easy way. So
yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's. So we're going to go on to the Next one. Okay, so the purpose of the strategic financial plan is to A, look into the future, 10 years, determine what the business will look like. B, translate the strategic plan into next year's objectives. C, convert the operating plan into monetary terms. Or D, identify the resources that will be necessary to accomplish the strategic plan. So before we attempt to answer this question, I just want to, for the audience, just give them a little background. So when we talk about a strategic financial plan, what that is, it's really a roadmap to understand the direction your business is heading and why. So when you do financial planning strategies in a business, you help determine where you're going to spend your money, time, and resources. It's really a plan for the business to develop, goals to achieve them. So you're taking a step back from your day-to-day operations and asking where your business is headed and what the priorities should be. So with that information, what do we think the answer to this question would be based on the choices that are given? Okay. Looks like most everyone's answering D, but let's look at the choices that are given. So it says, the first one is look 10 years, look into the future 10 years to determine what your business will look like. Well, what we said when we were going through the definition, it's really about ensuring the organization is following a plan to attain their short and long-term goals and maximize value for the business. So you probably can limit A just because it doesn't fit within the definition of a strategic plan because they're looking at both the short and long-term. And it's about developing the plan. Translate the strategic plan in next year's objectives. Well, remember we said we're taking a step back from the day-to-day operations and asking where your business is headed and what the price should be. So we can eliminate B as a choice as well. C is when it says converting the operating plan into terms, well, you're setting goals for your business and developing a plan behind those to achieve those goals. So it's probably not C. And then we come to D is, when we talk about the definition, we talk about the financial plan strategies for your business where we're determining where to spend the money and our resources. So D is sounds that fits well within the definition of what a strategic financial plan is. So, excuse me. So it's really about understanding the definition on what's being asked and the purpose of that. And that will help eliminate some of the choices and then ultimately answering the correct answer, providing the correct answer to the question, which I think a lot of the people really got based on the answers in the chat. Okay, great. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one is a zero-based plan or budget can be best described as A, starting each planning or budget cycle with a clean slate, B, adjusting expenses based on realized volumes, C, allowing unencumbered funds to be transferred the next year, or D, limiting department managers to only the expenses they control. Well, it's talking about a zero-based plan, and it looks like A is the same, starting each planning or budget cycle with a clean slate. Wow, that seems a pretty good definition of what a zero-based plan would be to me. And it looks like the other answers are all using data either from the prior year of what was not spent, or they're using existing information to be able to build the budget. And then D is, doesn't really have anything to do with any of that at all. So I think it sounds like based on responses, I would choose A, which seems to align with what's being asked, because they're saying starting each plan or budget cycle with a clean slate, and then the type of budgeting here is a zero-based plan or budget. And quite frankly, it's probably the most accurate way to budget, although it requires the most resources to be able to build a budget in this way. So, but I think A is probably the best answer here. And it is A. And I think a lot of people in the chat seem to have gotten that as well. So that was a pretty obvious one. Okay, so number 12, managed care plans that exert the most control over providers and therefore save the most money in provider payments are A, managed identity plans, B, preferred provider organizations, C, closed panel HMOs, or D, point of service HMOs. So what does everybody think about that? Yeah, this is pretty obvious. One, you know, it seems like based on responses in the chat, everybody's answering C. You know, identity plan probably has the least control. A PPO, you know, the member can go outside the network, although the costs are higher. And then point of service is really a hybrid between a PPO and an HMO plan. So it, you know, we pretty quickly eliminate a lot of these choices and provide the obvious one, which would be C, I think, in this case. Yeah, and it is C, yeah. Again, I think everyone, it was pretty obvious to most people that the answer is C on this one. So, okay, so we're down to the last question. A productivity measure that takes into account the level of skill required to accomplish the task is A, hourly rate, B, paid hours per unit of service, C, scheduled hours per unit of service, or D, labor compensation per unit of service. So what does everybody think about that? What do you all think the appropriate answer to this question is? Let me offer something in terms of trying to answer this question. It's talking about, when it talks about productivity measure, what they're really saying is, you know, they're measuring, you know, what needs to go into, you know, a job that's being done, whether it be a surgery or whether it be a clinic visit. You know, they're trying to measure the, when we had a question about output and input, it's the same type of thing here. They're trying to measure what would be needed in terms of measuring the type of skill that we require to accomplish the task. So, so in this case, you know, if we think about it, A is offering hourly rate. Well, I think it's a component of what's needed to determine the level of skill that's required, but it doesn't give us all the information we need. B and C, the paid hours per unit of service and the schedule hour per unit of service, again, that's a component of what we would need, but it doesn't give us all the information we need to measure the level of skill required to accomplish the task. So I think in this case, D is probably the best answer, because if you think about it, you know, when we're measuring the labor compensation per unit of service, it's determining what the appropriate staffing skill set would be required to accomplish this task. And then it's looking at the number of hours that would be required to accomplish this job or this service that's being provided. So it's really a combination of both. So, and I think D provides the best answer, because when we look at D, they're taking into account the how much an employee gets paid per hour, but they're also looking at the number of hours that goes into that job as well. So it's probably a combination of those two things that determines what level of skill that would be required to accomplish that task. So I think D here would probably be the best answer. And it is D. Certainly B, I think some people may have chose B, but that just gives you the number of hours, but it doesn't tell you the mix of staff that would be needed to accomplish this particular job or task or service. And that's where D becomes a better answer, because it takes into account the staffing mix as well as the number of hours to perform the job. Okay, I think that was the last question for finance. Any other questions on what I've gone through, or does anybody have any questions?
James, this is Rick. Can I ask a question for you?
Sure.
Finance is an area that people tend to struggle with, either because they don't use it a lot or because they just look at it and freak out like I did. what would you recommend? You mentioned the knowing the ratios. What would you recommend for prioritizing?
Yeah, I would just understand. You know, when looking at these things, I would understand the purpose behind the financial statements. Certainly, I'm not discounting memorizing the formulas, but I think it's more important to at least understand the core concepts. Certainly, you know, the different financial statements are offered, the different ratios that are provided. I think understanding what those ratios are, but more than that, understanding the purpose behind those ratios, what they're trying to measure, because that was brought out in several questions we saw here. So just, you know, using the flashcards that are you know, that we provide to just understand some of those key points and concepts that's being asked. And you know, and some of this is really going back and you know, I found, at least in the questions that are being asked, there's clues in terms of what's being asked and the answers that are being given, where you can eliminate several of the choices that are provided. But yeah, I think more than anything else, just have basic understandings of the different ratios, and then the purpose, what a financial statement is, and what's the purpose behind that financial statement would help a lot.
If I may add to that, probably start with the basic ratio, the very basic one. It might come up, you know, just on how to compute it or calculate it, because for sure those basic ratios will probably come out. So that would be my, you know,
yeah.
Then go down to the most complex ones. So
yeah, and things like, you know, there was one question there was asking about financial audits. Well, you know, just understanding from a business standpoint, you really do need to understand the different types of opinions that could be given by the auditors. But even that question, you know, there were several answers that were given that, you know, probably without even understanding the definition could be eliminated right away. So it's, I think in a lot of these questions, that's, you know, I think that was the case. But just having a basic understanding the definition behind the terms of, you know, qualified, the different types of opinions are given. So it's more about definitions and more about key concepts that should cover a number of the questions that were given, and most that we've discussed here today. And it looks like there was a question on, I'm going back and reading the chat. There was a question on the paid hours per unit, the productive hours. So let's go back to that question. Yeah, so this question, they're asking for the level of skill that's required to accomplish the task. So, you know, so what they're doing is, you know, like, let's say there's a procedure and that's being provided. So it's really about, you know, there were several choices here, but it's about understanding what the staffing mix is in terms of how much somebody's getting paid, and that you know, when they talk about compensation, that involves what the skill mix that's involved in the procedure that's being done. So the paid hours per unit of service is just all that's telling you, or the scheduled hours per unit of service, all that's telling you the number of hours that goes into a job, but it doesn't really tell you, because look at the questions being asked, they're telling you the level of skill that's required. Well, the paid hours, the scheduled hours, is not telling you that. The hourly rate, you know, that just gives you the hourly rate for a position, but it doesn't really give you the, you really need to understand both the compensation portion and then the number of the staffing mix and the hours that goes into that job. So that's why our labor compensation per unit of service becomes a better answer, because it takes into account both the number of hours required to accomplish that job, and then the staffing mix, which is part of the compensation component that's required to provide that service. So that's why D becomes, I think, a better answer in that case.
So basically productivity measures, not measures, for example, in a nursing area of, med-surg, it measures the nursing, the LVN, the CNA, so all the different areas job or people that in that department are all considered as a productivity measure. So that's why James is keep on saying skill mix. So that's what you mean by it. Skill mix is the combination of all labor types in that area.
Yeah, because again, B just tells you how many hours it paid or the scheduled hours it takes to accomplish the job. It doesn't really speak to the staffing mix that's used to provide that service. Whether it be nurses, MAs, medical assistants, doctors, and that's where the compensation component comes in. So this question is interesting because it's really a combination of A, B, and C, which D essentially is. It's a combination of, how much you pay, what you compensated for that staff to provide that service, and then how many hours it takes for each unit of service, to accomplish the service or product.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Thank you, James. That was very insightful, and you are truly wealth of knowledge in finance. So we really appreciate every time that you are here during our review series. So you really give us a lot of information, useful information to prepare for the exam. So thank you very much for your time.
Oh, no, I'm happy to help.
Yeah. So our next body of knowledge that we're going to be dealing with will be the human resources. So, and I am honored to introduce to you our guest today who will help us with the brain walk and, and answering those questions that we have prepared for you. Sherry Ambrose, she used to be the chair for this member advancement committee for CAHL, and currently, she is the director of quality and compliance by the by the Bay Health, and an adjunct professor for University of San Francisco School of Nursing and Health Profession, and he was also the CAHL Service Hours Awardee in 2022. So I'm turning it on to Sherry. Take it away.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Cal. Yes, we'll go ahead and proceed to human resources. And the amount of time that James spends with you is well invested for you, right, James? Investments in terms of your learnings. Human resources is an area where you'll really use your brain walk. And so this section will go through as a team as we point out some of the brain walk topics that will be helpful. Be thinking about the questions, which there'll be 20 to 11% of the exam in terms of federal laws and national laws. Just really think on that level. There's no state laws, obviously, because this is a national test. Also, as you look at this, a lot of the questions will have a distractor topic questions, and I've seen that more in this area. But also think about when you approach a topic, subject, or an activity in HR, there's structured events by order. So when you want to post a position, and we'll talk about that more in the question, what the actual steps are in their order. And some of the questions are like that. So as you're studying, do that. A lot of discussion on motivation and supporting employees and the best approach with that, and improving employee satisfaction, and a little bit of discussions on compensation and benefit packages. And we'll go to next slide. But I can't stress enough that we have a grid format that we'll show after this that also works with this as we look at different programs, federal laws, including either OSHA, COBRA, FMLA, that help if you study in the grid format with some of the key points. Also, as we talk about labor relations, practices, and strategies, if collective bargaining agreements and so forth are not some of your areas that you've had experience in, I highly recommend you meet with some of your colleagues or as you look at the bundle of within ACHA, there are a group of books in addition to the Ken White book on managing for success. And the current bundle does include human resources and healthcare managing for success, in addition to, the well-managed healthcare organization book. So that might be important for you if it isn't an area where you've practiced in a lot in human resources. Other of you that have had direct reports or have had experience in these areas, you'll use your intuitive sense to be able to answer some of these questions. Always important too to think about when you're posting a position or you're looking at bringing in your important resources into your organization, in what order you do that and what's important. And I can't stress the job description enough and some of the answers you'll see. So we'll go ahead and do some of our sample questions to get you into this area. So this is a very straightforward question, which of the following is typically performed during a background check. And some of these will be distraction questions, verification of personal finances, involvement in religious or political activities, previous employment or education claims, and prior performance evaluation. So what would be your answer for this? And if you want to put why, just a quick word in it as you're practicing your brain walk, please do. And we have a well seasoned group saying C, previous employment or education claims. And this is a good example of kind of a distraction question. So, and as we talked about the brain walk, as you read this, I love when Nora says, read it backwards, background check. That's a big piece during performed. And as you're going backwards to focus on that word typically, because this is how they phrase these questions, is typically, most often, that type of thing. So this gives you both the distraction question and then how to read the question. So next slide, please. The primary purpose of a well-developed performance appraisal system. So again, this focuses on how to support employees and how to work within your organization to manage your most important resource, your employees, has these 4 answers. And what I'm seeing most often is, as people are putting into the chat, good, A and C, you're narrowing it down to 2, which is also a good test strategy. We're seeing C, and the answer for this is B. And it's, as we talk about how to support employees, how to look at presenting yourself in your best manner and how to work with employees, developmental feedback and guidance meets that criteria. But I do like that people had narrowed it down to 2. I think that's important. We talk about you can mark on the test. So if there's a question that you want to go back to and you narrowed it down, this one is the primary purpose again. So not that D might not be important, determine how well management engages employees. That might be more of an employee satisfaction survey. But you're trying to engage with your employees, and that's important. But B answers it to the best of the what they're looking for in this question. So next question. With growing frequency, employees who have been dismissed are resorting to lawsuits for redress. In such cases, the court may find in favor of the plaintiff if the employer dismissed that plaintiff. So this is an important question that you really want to read slowly. You really want to take your time, do your breathing, and then look at it with individual eyes as you're looking at some of the major components of this question. And this is the point in time with my practice in HR where I'm going to call in my legal advice. So I'm going to ask Rick to go through this with us.
And I was just thinking, man, I hope she doesn't call on me on this one. So, okay, so just as a reminder, I have not looked at these beforehand, and there's therefore a really good chance I could get the wrong answer. It happens, but I want to give you what happens if I get the test and this question pops up, what's going to go through my mind to figure out the area. So I'm looking at employees who've been dismissed. Okay, they're going to sue us. Okay. That's sort of background. I can get rid of that. Court may find in favor of the plaintiff, the person suing, if the employer dismissed. So I'm looking at basically when could you lose a lawsuit about firing someone? Right. So I've translated all that wording in my mind. I've gotten it down to when might you lose a lawsuit for firing someone? So for cause without using progressive discipline. Okay, well, progressive discipline is first you do a verbal warning, then you do a written warning, then you move it up. And there's no law that says you have to do that. So I'm not really thinking you're going to lose a lawsuit on that. You know, a surgeon who walks in drunk to the operating room, you're not going to give them a verbal warning first. Okay, so A is false. Without cause. Yeah, firing someone without cause, even if they're not necessarily even if they are an at-will employee, or if you're an at-will date, then that one is more likely so far. I'm going to put that one on hold, but I think I like B. Before the end of the probation period, nope, that's the best time to fire someone. Nothing illegal about that. That's why we have probation. Okay. For union organizing activities. Now, that one also, yeah, guaranteed. Ask Starbucks right now. If you fire someone for union organizing activities, you are in big trouble. The question is that a lawsuit? Well, certainly it's the National Labor Relations Board would come down on that. Would you lose the lawsuit on top of it? Maybe. So I'm between B and D, and I'm not 100% sure on this one. I'm going to go with B, though, because I think D is more of an enforcement. And I'm going to say again, I could be totally wrong, but I'm going to go with B on it.
We'll take that answer. And the answer is B. And this is why I would have Rick as part of my legal team in any work I do. And also just as a healthcare executive, using your legal teams in HR is very important for this reason, because it can be confusing. I think, as Rick pointed out, there are instances in D, but the majority or the growing frequency, and that was my key here, is without cause. So if you've looked at, and please write down some of these words that you might not be as familiar with, or even for me, if I've been doing this for a while, I would write down right now without cause and look up your definition and write down what it looks like, so that you have that in your minds and you have that understood before you go into the exam, because it could potentially be one of the questions. Thank you, Rick. Next question. What's the most effective approach to preventing the need for employee discipline? So this question is asking, what would you do in order to be have your employees be successful? And this exam and all that we do and learn from ACHE is to really emphasize rewards, emphasize supporting your employee, education, helping the employee in advance of getting to a spot where we are at either sanctions or disciplinary action. So in these answers, what is the one that would be considered the most effective approach to preventing the need for employee disciplinary action? And I do like having an accurate job description, in that with that, we talk about the job description as being the most important thing that both the employer and the employee can report back to. And that, or look back to make sure that they're doing the job accurately. So the answer is job description. Next question, please. Which activity should precede the beginning of a recruitment process for a new employee? And these are those questions that would ask you to take a task. So as you're studying for this section or any section, try and put the tasks out in a timeline. So in this one, which activity should precede the beginning of a recruitment process for a new hire? Information from the employees in a similar position, assessing the cost, making a decision whether to emphasize internal, external, or conducting a job analysis, which is D. And that's correct. The answer is D, and you'll be thinking about this in terms of how you would approach this. Thank you. Question 5. We have a total of 8, so we'll move
Can we go back to question number 5? Oh. There you go. So I would probably, if I'm answering this question, I would look at the word precede, keywords for me. So if it's before hiring, so then I would eliminate all the questions, and because most of the before hiring is you have to have a job analysis. That's the sequence. Job analysis, then job description. That's it. Then job description, then you proceed with hiring or hiring process. So that's my
Perfect, Michael.
Jerry,
thank you.
Jerry, I've got a question also. B looks like it's also correct, but I think less correct than D. Is that why D is better than B?
As you start precede the beginning of a recruitment, technically B is part of your recruitment process. Technically, you've created your job analysis. You really understand, I need this type of position for the work, or this skill set, or this individual with these qualifications because the job requires blah, blah, blah. Then you're going into your recruitment. So thanks, Rick. Yeah, it does show.
Yeah, once you create the job analysis, then you have to also assess the salary. That's part of the, part of the sequence. That's why, it's not. So
well, I was thinking like, deciding whether to go internal, external, or, where to advertise, things like that. Those are the costs of the recruitment as well. But you have to decide before you start.
Right.
The actual recruitment.
Proceed. And I appreciate you calling that out because it is the question there that gives us. All right, next question. The evaluation of senior management is best administered, and take a look at these answers and put in what you think. And this could actually be pertinent for any of us, senior management, any roles we're in. And it sort of pertains to what we'd be thinking about, how important the job description is for the various reasons, is that specific activities are called out within a job description, and what performance measures need to be looked at when you're measuring someone's success. So as you take a look at that, the evaluation of a senior management position is a bit of a distractor. It's really any management position or any position in your organization. So the answer is when criteria is established and known to both parties. So keep these thoughts in mind, that it's more of a global perspective, even though they may say senior management would be a distractor, but this is really for any position. Anyone deserves the right to know what the criteria is for measuring their success and should be known to both parties, employer and employee. Next question. Critical incident technique of employee performance appraisals. Now, one thing about this question, which is important, is you might not specifically know critical incident technique, but you can look at employee performance appraisals requires raters. So as you're thinking about that, you're thinking about really, again, evaluating somebody's performance, what I would need to know to be able to do that, and what, even if I haven't specifically worked with or used the critical incidents technique, you're thinking about critical incidences as what people do within their job, what critical piece to their job. So as we look at those and you look at the answers, and people are, I think, answering a little bit in the chat. I see some D's, and thank you, critical incidents, the key word. The answer is yes, D, you did a great job with that. And you're looking at both work that you need to provide feedback on. So you're going to bring out what is good, or sometimes I just use the opportunities, we've used that term, versus poor performance. But poor performance is where you need to address it with your employee if you are a appraiser or you're the supervisor manager. So again, it takes that global perspective about looking at the bigger picture with all employees and how you would rate them anyway, whether you use the critical incident technique or not. So our last question. And Hertzberg's hygiene and motivators theory, an important topic to take a look at. And you probably all have had some exposure to that in your undergraduate, or if you've been in graduate programs. And as you look at this question, Hertzberg's hygiene and motivators theory of motivation, look for distractor questions, rule out what's true, what's false, and put your answers in there. Okay. And the answer is correct. We know that money isn't an intrinsic factor for many folks, according to Hertzberg, but it can be a dissatisfier if you don't feel you're compensated correctly, but it's not an intrinsic motivator for us, why we do our work, why we select different positions we're in, why what we accomplish. So that's an important concept, and I would suggest looking at Hertzberg. So our next part here is to look at an example of a grid that will be very helpful when studying for this section, and we'll be able to provide this to you, but you will go through some of the important key timeline events that have occurred in the human resources that pertain to healthcare, and then some of those ratios above, which it's a very nice grid for us to look at, sample. And you'll want to create your own, but you certainly can gain some insight into the process with this. So thank you very much for allowing me to present the human resources section. And good luck, and you're doing the right thing by staying focused with studying with this group. They're a phenomenal group that will help you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sher, for helping us with this initiative, and appreciate your wealth of knowledge in human resources. So now we probably before we join, we are ready to take some questions. We have 2 or 3 minutes. If the participants has some questions, please unmute yourself and tell us if you have any questions.
One of the things that I'd like to emphasize is, if you've noticed when we go through the questions and when we do the brain walk and we're the true false and we're eliminating questions, if you notice that the broadest answer tends to be the best, because if you've got the broadest and then you've got subsets, sometimes you'll see some of the items are subsets of that first one. For several of these that have been confusing, if you think about how it's the overarching answer that'll solve for that question.
And one advice related to question number 1 for human resources, there was a question about calling the performance or verifying the performance of an applicant. So I think that's not illegal to do it. So always, you refer to equal opportunity employment federal agency or that website. There's a lot of rules and regulations in terms of that pertains about hiring process there. So, and one of the calling, the applicants or references, something like that. It's prohibited. So always work with your HR before you do that, because there are certain guidelines that you have to follow.
Okay, there's a comment about questions put out in the chat from last week that we didn't get the answers. So that's what we call the parking lot. So if we didn't answer any of those, let us know. There's a question about the ADDIE model for HR. We can put that on our parking lot. We have a couple minutes and I'm gonna look it up. Oh, again, one of the things that I need to emphasize are
it's in the flashcard.
Flashcards.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it'll be in there, but these aren't in order right now. So we'll put that in our parking lot and answer that next week.
Yeah. So if you purchase the flashcard, it is the ADDIE model is there, so it's explained well in one of the cards. So for HR.
Okay. All right.
And I think you'll add in self-reporting for this class.
Yeah, I thought it was on the parking lot this time too. Again, through the My ACHE section, which is like your private little recordings, for everything that you do in My ACHE once you log in. There's a place for self-reporting, continuing or qualified education versus the face-to-face. So, and again, for this session, you self-report at the end, it's 8 hours for this particular one. But we'll add that in there again. So which one is HR? Okay, well, again, I've got all the flashcards here too. So we'll find the answer and put it in the parking lot.
Okay. So I think it's almost 11:30, and I would like to, thank everyone for your participation for today's. Oh, do you have? Oh, there you go.
I found it.
Model, yay! Thank you, Nora.
There's the answer. Analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation, a systems approach to training.
Yeah. So
there it is.
Yeah. So as I was saying.
That helps.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, there it is. Somebody, Rick put the link out there. Thank you.
Very good, right? Okay, thank you. And hopefully we'll see you again next week, and we will be doing the management and leadership and the business knowledge of the exam, so part of the exam. So thank you for your time that you have spent us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the web again next week. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend, and happy Easter tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.